Cheers, Mama.
Cheers.
Love you so much.
You too. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. 19 years of being together and 15 years of marriage. How's it feel?
It feels good. It doesn't feel like it's been that long.
So I'm not a terrible disappointment?
No.
That's good.
You've turned out to be quite handsome.
That's good. Very reassuring. Thank you.
That's how I picked you.
What do you mean?
I picked you based on your looks.
I'm okay with that.
I'm just joking.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm sorry that things have kind of deteriorated over the years, but it is what it is.
Well, I didn't expect you to say, to remain 21, but you're like a fine wine, Daddy.
Hey, I feel like we still both look pretty good for having been together this long, and I still find you incredibly beautiful today. Maybe even more so now than I did 20 years ago.
Oh, shucks.
Am I winning points?
Yeah. Are you trying to?
Maybe.
It's working.
It has been a very, very long journey for you and I, and it remains incredibly surreal to be sitting here with you out in the middle of nowhere, least place that I ever expected that we would be. Did you picture life? Did you envision life looking this way at this stage of the game?
I hope that it would, but I don't know that I thought that it was realistic, but yeah, growing up and everything, I always wanted to have my own farm and my horses and live out in the country, and always, yes.
It's so funny when I was thinking back last night, I believe, about just some of the things that we've done and some of the things that you've said in the time that we've been together. And you've always been like, I can live anywhere. Like lifestyle, I'm very flexible on. We could live out in the middle of nowhere and live the type of life that ironically we are now living.
Yeah. Yeah, and you used to be like, no, you couldn't.
About you?
Yeah.
No, you've always been very flexible for sure. This is such a far-fetched life that we are now living, given how it is that we both grew up.
For sure, 100%. But yeah, I think the desire was there. It's kind of funny considering how we met and how we were. I mean, we met when we were 21 years old, just turned 21. Mm-hmm. And we were far from adults at that point. We were still kids. And so we got the benefit of maturing together into adulthood versus becoming who we are as adults and then trying to make that work after the fact.
Yeah, I think it's possible to make it work regardless of the circumstance. I think it's perfectly fine if people meet later in life and kind of have their own individual identity and then come to grow together. But you're right. The two of us have matured more so as like a package deal.
Yeah.
More so than being our own individual people.
Right.
We've grown together.
Yeah. I've always kind of wondered if it's harder when you meet when you're older because you are just so set in your ways, or if you've lived alone for a really long time, you create your own habits and you don't have to answer to somebody else or compromise with somebody else. And is that harder after the fact? Because, we didn't have that. We just kind of went from college and our parents' homes to living together.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Is there anything that you would have done differently now that we have hindsight and 20 years to look back upon, 19 years to look back upon?
No, I don't think so.
Same.
I would have walked the same path.
For sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today, right?
Right.
Don't really live life with a lot of regret, but, there have for sure been missteps along the way. But again, it's hard to knock the path that you have walked over time because had it been any different, you'd have that butterfly effect of maybe life not looking the way that it does for us right now.
Yeah. No, I've loved every step of the journey because I've just really enjoyed each chapter. I was always looking forward. Mm-hmm. But I still found so much joy and satisfaction in each step. Like when we had that little tiny apartment, I was proud of that apartment. We brought Nevaeh home to that 1-bedroom apartment and we tried to set up like a bassinet in the dining room. I was proud of that space. I loved it. There was so much joy at that time in our lives.
We've come such a long way. It's been so much work. And yeah, you're right. I feel like at this stage, things are a little different. We get to look back and reflect a little more for so long, pretty much up until we moved here to North Idaho. We've always looked forward and there's always been work that's needed to be completed in order to get where it is that we want it to be. And now I feel like we've achieved and checked a lot of the boxes that we had on our list. And because of that, it's definitely caused me to become far more reflective and take a different outlook and perspective on the future and even the present. Honestly, I feel like I need to be a lot more present and appreciative for what it is that we have. We've been so tremendously blessed over the years, and it feels like we've had our hands held along the way as far as God really providing us with the necessary guidance. Just with, us being able to achieve all the goals that we had for ourselves.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a big part of the momentum forward was we had a similar goal. Mm-hmm. We always talked about what are our plans and goals. We always had kind of a 5-year plan. We sort of did it in 5-year chapters, if you really kind of look at the journey.
Yeah.
And so it was like, what does life look like 5 years from now? What is our goal? And then we would work towards that goal together.
I guess my point being is that it's always been head down and work, and life is definitely begun to slow down for us. Kids are getting older. You and I are getting older. And it's just such a bizarre spot that I find myself in, at least when I really stop to think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of that weird part, you're turning 40. We've been together almost 20 years. I mean, we've almost been together longer than we've been apart, which is crazy.
Yeah. Just there's so many mixed emotions. I feel like I've been kind of an emotional wreck lately with all of these milestones occurring and taking place. And then like when I look at Kenji and seeing him just hobble around and stuff, and I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. And like, I feel things changing around us and there's no stopping it.
Yeah.
But again, it's caused me to become so much more reflective and appreciative.
Well, 13 years ago, everything was new. And we got a puppy and we had a brand new baby and we bought a brand new house and you started a brand new job and everything was fresh and new. And now the baby is 13 and that little house is just in our memory.
The baby's 13?
Yeah.
Nevaeh?
No. Went 13 years ago when we had Kaimani. Like that's when we got Kenji. And the puppy is, on borrowed time at this point. And so it's like kind of a chapter that's closing for us, and that's hard.
I know we've had discussions about this too, but I feel like knowing now that we have this hindsight to look back at, it really the big takeaway for me has been that time moves so incredibly quickly. And again, it is outside of your control. So I think that's what's sparking so many of these emotions and causing me to literally having to remind myself on a daily, almost moment to moment basis of like, hey, this doesn't last.
Right.
So take it in.
Yeah.
Appreciate it and burn it into your brain.
Yeah, I think appreciate it's a big thing. I mean, then that's kind of been, even with the times that were hard, there was still always so much appreciation in that. I mean, when I say I loved every step, I absolutely loved every step. That little house, we were so proud of the first little house, and I had the 2 little kids, and then we got pregnant with Kira and we outgrew the little house. But that was such a good time. In like just bringing Nevaeh to the park every day and just having that. And then we bought the big house in Battleground. And that was like, oh my gosh, how did we get here? And there was so much joy and memories there. I mean, Eli was born in that house and then leaving that was really difficult. That was a hard chapter to close.
There have been a lot of hard chapters along the way, very well documented and thoroughly discussed between the two of us. When you lay it all out like that, I get teary-eyed.
I know, I'm seeing you do it. Yeah, it's but it's been good, and I think the only reason that it's worked is our partnership and our common goals. And my dad was always saying, like, find someone you're equally yoked with, and I misunderstood that. I thought that meant find somebody just like you, so I was always kind of looking for someone with a similar personality, which didn't exist really because I have a very, very strong feminine personality. I carry like all the traits of like a stereotypical feminine personality.
Yeah, we're both that way. Not that I'm feminine.
No, you're not feminine.
We're very stereotypical in our roles, I guess.
Yes, you're very, I mean, I would almost put you like alpha male. And and so I was kind of looking for somebody more like me, and that it was never good. Like even I would date someone that was like maybe a little bit more on that end of the spectrum. I was like, I'm not really looking for that. So I don't, it's just funny because equally yoked didn't mean just like you.
So what does it mean to you?
To me, it means just a common goal and the same or common core values.
I take it as literally pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
So very literal translation with that metaphor. But yeah, we've been having discussions, especially with Nevaeh, and she is now getting older. She's coming into adulthood. And so we've had a lot of discussions about this very thing with her.
Yep. Yeah, how to find a spouse, what to look for in a partner, because she is, I mean, she's 17 years old. She's going to start dating, and I don't want her wasting her time with people that she's not equally yoked with. So now that I feel like I understand what that means now, like I think you can get along with somebody that's very, very different from you personality wise. Like us, we're very, very different from one another. But you have to have the same core values. Like if you have very different political or religious beliefs, I think that doesn't work. And some people are like, no, that can totally work. Opposites attract. They may attract, but I just don't see how they stay together, especially when it comes to raising kids.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be like-minded in your belief system. We have very different personality traits, I think. So same core values, very different personality traits. And ironically, we were discussing this with Nevaeh, I think we kind of make up for each other's deficiencies and shortcomings in a number of ways. You have a tendency to excel in those areas where maybe I'm not so polished, let's say, and
a little rough around the edges, Daddy.
Vice versa. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm a heavily flawed individual, as so many of us are, and it's part of what makes me so grateful to have you is that I know I can lean on you in those areas where I know I'm not necessarily the best suited to handle a given situation.
Well, I think that works really well with parenting too, because there's a lot of areas where I just see it differently than you, and areas where I'm very weak in parenting and where you have no problem stepping up in those areas, or areas where I might feel like not that you overstepped it, that you just handled it differently than I would have. And then I'm kind of there to soften it. And so I think that that's been really helpful for our kids too, because we are so different.
It's balance. Yeah. So having this sense of wisdom, I guess you could say, with the experience that we do have and having been together this long, what advice would you give to somebody that was maybe younger than us, a younger couple in say their 20s who are considering marriage or starting their own family? What would you say to them?
Well, I would first ask what their goals were for the future and whether or not they had common goals, and whether or not they were on the same page towards working towards those goals. Because if you have one saver and one spender, you're going to have massive problems. Because I think money is a big thing. It really is. And no one really wants to talk about like the financial aspect of a marriage, but it is the number one cause of divorce is money woes and money disagreements. If you have one person that's just going to spend everything and live day by day, and you have another person that's trying to save, that saver is going to view that spender as being disrespectful.
That's definitely a very important aspect of marriage, or making for a happy, functioning relationship of any kind. It's not everything.
It's not everything, no.
But yeah, for sure, that is something that I think, again, you have to be on the same page about.
Yeah, it's the unromantic aspect of considering marriage.
But it's very practical and very relevant.
And then I think also, what are your goals for a family? You can't have one person who wants to have 8 kids and one person that doesn't like children and wants cats.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work either. So you have to have the same life goals, but you don't have to be the same type of person. And I think in so many cases, I mean, can you imagine if you married someone just like you? Like just like you.
I mean, I can. I don't think it would be a recipe for success.
Yeah.
However, I guess the way that I tend to think of it is that you are no longer an individual. I think the unification of man and woman, of husband and wife, you lose that sense of individuality, and you no longer matter as much as you once did. All of your concerns become about your spouse and your children over time, if you were so blessed to have some.
Yeah. I kind of feel like you're incomplete until you meet that spouse, because nobody's a perfect person. I mean, we're all heavily flawed. Like you said, all of us, we all have shortcomings and strong things that are strong about our personalities. And until you meet somebody who complements your personality, and so often that complement could be polar opposites because they make up for your weaknesses. And until you meet that person and then you become one person, you become one much more whole, balanced person.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think marriage is for everybody? There are a lot of folks out there who go their entire lives without ever having been married. What do you think?
No, I don't think marriage is for everybody. I think there are individuals out there, and I'm not saying that everyone that chooses to be unmarried is
Wrong.
this way.
Right.
But there are people out there that just have sociopathic traits and stuff that are maybe a little more self-centered. I don't think that those people are suited to be parents or spouses, because if you can't think outside of yourself, then it's probably better to just not.
Yeah. I mean, we have a tendency, especially here on the podcast, to speak in very wide generalities. But yeah,
Right.
I don't think marriage is for everybody. I would say, however, that I feel like you are missing out on something that is so transformative in life if you go without ever having been married, or especially if you go without ever having kids.
Yeah.
There is so much more that you can only tap into emotionally as far as learning about yourself. And that only comes through sharing your life with somebody else.
Yeah.
And raising children together, especially.
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing before I had kids that you can never understand God's love for you until you have a child.
Agreed. Yeah, I completely understand that.
And I thought, no, I understand God's love for me. But I came at it from a selfish point of view. I came at it from a God loves me point of view. And I didn't see it from his point of view. But now that I have children and I would do anything for them, and my love for them is truly unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing they could do. They could do the worst thing in the world and I would still love them.
100%.
I may disagree with what they're doing greatly. I may even separate myself from that person. I mean, they would have to do something terrible. But
It's just like every term or expression that uses the term or phrase unconditional love. I don't feel like, at least for myself, speaking for myself, there's no way that I ever would have known, fully grasped or understood what is meant by that
Right.
term unless I had ever met you and had children together.
yeah,
It just wouldn't happen for me. I probably would have thought that I knew what
Right.
that meant.
yeah.
But now, again, with that hindsight of having been married and having had children, I can very honestly say that there's no way I could have ever fully wrapped my head around it.
Right. Well, and I mean, some people, they don't have children, they have pets and stuff like that. And then they think that they love that pet in the same way that we love our children. And, you know, I'm a dog parent or something like that. And that's fine if you want to use that title, but it is not the same. And I could say that with 100% certainty. And you can get very, very angry at me for saying this. I love my Bichon like you love your son Kaimani, or like you love little Eli or Kira or Nevea. And I will say with 100% certainty that you do not love your Bichon in the same way. When I look at Eli, if something were to happen to one of my children, I would never be okay. I would never recover from that, not ever.
Yeah.
When something happens to Kenji, who we love dearly, I mean, I love that dog so much. I make his food twice a day. I cook for this dog, and I have for years and years. And I mean, I would do a lot for Kenji, but when he passes, I will be very sad for a long time, but I will recover and I will move on and I will find lots of joy in life. It would not be the same with a child.
Animals can provide you with a tremendous sense of love.
Yes.
And you can have incredibly strong feelings when it comes to an animal. But yeah, every time I hear that comparison or analogy, I always kind of cringe a little bit internally because it's not the same. And I think until you have kids, you really don't come to realize that. And I'm not trying to speak poorly on anybody who feels as though that love is comparable. But if you've never had a child, I'm sorry, it's not the same.
It's not. Yeah. No. A human child it's a love that you cannot describe, and it's a love that you can never imagine until you have it.
So what is it that you're looking forward to most in the future? Because while I have become very reflective, it also in a weird way has caused me to also look forward through a newfound lens or perspective, because now I have enough life experience behind me to know that the next 20 years are going to whiz by in the blink of an eye. So what is it that you're looking forward to most? I already know the answer to this, but what is it that you're looking forward to most?
I mean, grandchildren, of course. That's going to be my number one. I'm all about the babies. I'm done having babies, so now I'm just looking for the next babies that I made. Because
Old maid status.
I want to sit there on Christmas morning and I want to look at a bunch of grandkids and be like, you know, like you and I made all these people. Like, how cool is that?
The fruit of our loins.
Yeah. Think about like if we, have our 75th wedding anniversary.
Now, you know what's really interesting about that too is kind of like we were just saying, is that you can't understand the love that a parent has for their child. And every time you hear from somebody who is a grandparent, they always tell people who are just parents like us and where we currently find ourselves, that you will never understand the level of love and devotion that you have until you have grandchildren. That amplifies things to a whole nother level. And I buy into that completely.
I have a hard time with that one because I think I loved my little tiny babies that I made so much. Like it's hard to imagine feeling in that same way with someone else's babies, even though it's my baby's babies. I'm going to have to experience it, but I know I'm going to love them.
You don't know that love yet, which is why
I just haven't felt it yet.
Right. Yeah. It's like trying to explain to somebody, the whole parental love thing, same thing.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just a lot more receptive to hearing people out when they are older than I am at any given stage of life.
Yeah.
Now that we are 40 years old, and I told you before, like everybody who always said to me my entire life, "Oh, wait till you're older, you're gonna have aches and pains and all that," and I kind of just rolled my eyes and was like, "Oh, well, that varies from person to person, and I really don't think I'm gonna feel a certain way at age 40, but I 100% do." And they were right. I was wrong. I will be the first to admit it. So it lends itself to me being a lot more receptive now whenever somebody does go out of their way to give me a little life advice.
So what would your advice be to a young couple?
It would be very similar to what it is that you express, but I think, you're going to have hardships, you're going to have difficulties along the way. And I think you constantly need to remain focused on the fact that, kind of like I said, you are now a united front. You are no longer an individual. And so you kind of have to throw all of your wants, needs, and desires and cast them to the side and realize that every decision you make, every action that you take, all has an impact on not only you, but understand that that's where you, at least for me, this is where I derive my strength from. Every time, I feel down, it's you or my...
Stop.
I was going to say it was you or my...
Do you want to talk about it later?
Try not to break. You are my refuge. You mean so much to me, and
we should have known going into this.
as when you find your sounds cheesy, when you find your soulmate, it you just have to remain very aware and appreciative of the fact that it's a tremendous blessing. So when difficult times come along, it's nothing that's insurmountable, and as long as you remain united, you can get through anything.
Well, I think that's a huge part of it too. I think a lot of people, just change this pacing. So a lot of people go into marriage looking for a happy marriage. I hear that a lot amongst really young people. Like, I want to have a happy marriage. And I think that's too simplistic of a goal because, and it sounds cold to be like, marriage isn't about happiness. Like, you hear people say that, but I think older people say that because life isn't always happy.
Yeah.
And so if your goal is to have a happy marriage, when hardships come along and tragedies come along, and they will, just loss in life or money problems, a loss of a job.
Life is not easy.
Death of loved ones. There's things that will make you miserable.
Yeah.
And life can be miserable for extended periods of time. And if your goal in your marriage is to be happy and your life isn't happy in that chapter, you might feel like your marriage is failing.
Right.
When it's not. It's just not a happy time. And so a happy marriage, I don't think, should be the goal. I think it sounds weird. This sounds weird, but it's not what I mean. And I don't mean not that your marriage should be happy, but life isn't always happy. And so if that's your focus, you may feel like you're failing when it's just a valley in life.
It's temporary. It's a hardship. And it's why I
Right.
say that I look to you and you are my refuge for sure. 100%. I think the reason I get so worked up and emotional about it is because I grew up in a single parent household where my mom and dad were married, and that marriage fell apart when I was very young. So marriage is something that I take very seriously, and it's something that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I mean, we committed really early. And the very first thing we did was join our bank accounts. And not to bring this back to money, but it was symbolic because when you join everything, there are couples that get married and they have their separate bank accounts and they literally don't even know what each other are doing. They may have a joint account, but then they have a his account and a her account. And I don't feel like that's a recipe for success because I don't feel like married couples should ever live in a single way. You were to become one flesh. You are to become one person, and you should share all things. And if you can't tell your husband what you're spending your money on, or you don't want him to know, then you've got communication problems. Or same thing with the husband. And it's like, well, these are our funny money accounts. You shouldn't need funny money accounts. I still have funny money. I mean, if I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy this because it's cute or something, I don't need a separate private account to do so. And so I just feel like it's symbolic to keep things separate and private from one another. And it's not really a recipe for success. And so I don't know. I've always found that kind of weird.
Yeah, again, I just think it's so important to be a united front in every
Right.
way possible. There is no, again, there's no
Yeah.
singular me anymore.
Right.
It is now us in all things.
Yeah. Don't own separate houses. Which people do that too. Or go on separate vacations. Like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, oh, I just need to get away. Well, you need to maybe ask yourself, why do you need to get away? And what can we do to fix that? And maybe you need to just get away with your spouse.
Yeah, I've never felt like I ever needed to get away. We just got a question this morning. It was a
Yeah,
YouTube comment
we
that
did.
came in asking about, hey, like you guys are together 24/7, 365. Don't you get sick of each other? And don't you ever need time away from each other? And I know that there are people out there who make the argument and say that they do. And I've never once felt that way. In fact, I become very depressed if I end up on my own. There have been circumstances and times where I've left for work for like a week-long stay in another state, and just being away from family and being away from you is something that I really don't enjoy, quite
Yeah.
honestly. And I'm somebody who, grew up an only child and really appreciates solitude and all that. And I'm not talking about momentary solitude. I'm talking about just being away from family for, again, an extended period of time. It's my reaction and answer to that question when I read it was like, no,
Yeah.
never do I feel that way, ever.
Yeah. And it's funny because we don't have the perfect marriage. We get into it. We do.
Yeah, people always ask us if
Yep.
we have arguments, and we've been together for almost 20 years. Of course, things come up, and of
Yeah.
course, we have arguments. Sometimes we have very heated arguments,
Yeah.
but there's never a time where the idea pops into my head of like, hey, this is catastrophic, and because we're not getting along, I dislike you, and I no longer want to be with you or around you. Never does that thought ever cross my mind.
Yeah, I kind of feel like once you have kids, divorce needs to be off the table unless there's infidelity involved. Because once you have children, now their needs are more important than your own. And so divorce should just never be on the table. So it's like we're in this. So when we get into it over something, it's like, well, we better figure it out or we're going to be fighting about this for the next 50 years because I'm not going anywhere and you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So you want to fight for 50 years or we're going to hash this out?
This is something I'm extra sensitive to because I was the byproduct of a failed marriage. It's something, especially when you have kids, like, hey, if things aren't working out and it's just you and your spouse, okay, I still think that you should work to try to stick it out. But when you have kids, I'm in complete agreement with you that you do whatever it takes to make that marriage work because it's no longer about you. And having lived through that experience, I mean, when you tell me about people that we know in common about their marriages or relationships falling apart, I become, especially when these people have kids, I become so just upset or disappointed by it because I know the reality of what's coming for that family.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
It's not good for anybody.
No.
It's not good for the dads. So often they're separated from their children. Divorce courts do tend to favor the moms in that regard. And so then you've got a lot of children that are missing out on very attentive dads. They only get to see them on the weekends and things like that, which is not enough for a dad's presence in a child's life. And it's not good for the moms. You're missing out on every other Christmas and birthdays, and it's very expensive to get divorced when you have children.
It's not good for anyone, like you said.
Yeah.
It's shaped so much of my identity. I mean, my parents' marriage fell apart when I was, we're talking like 8, 9 years old. And it has definitely had a lifelong impact on me in a number of ways. I'm sure as your spouse, you would agree that it's had a tremendous impact in molding the person that I am today. But I think coming away from it now as an adult, it's been a good thing, because going through all of those tough times as a child, I feel like has made me a little more hyper aware of my role as your husband and my role as a father to our children. So there's something good to come from it, but having to live through the experience of it was not fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just not an option. And so, that kind of brings us back to our fights. Like, it doesn't really even matter if they get heated or whatever. Like, we still try to be as respectful as possible, and stuff slips and you say things you don't mean sometimes. And it just happens. That's what anger does to people.
Yeah.
But I think we almost fight like siblings in a weird way. Like, we can be like, and whatever. And then we'll walk away, and then I'll be like, do you want pizza? And you'll be like, yeah, I want pizza. And then we'll just sit there and eat pizza, and then it's over, and that's kind of how brothers and sisters are.
Do you think that evolves over time? Like, the longer you've been married, the more you come to recognize what it is when it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, if one of us blurts something out in those moments where we are not having our best day as a couple, I kind of walk away from it or shrug it off much more easy now, I think, than when we were 25 years old and we were married, because it's just different now. Like, I recognize it for what it is. I know what it is. We both know what it is.
Yeah.
One of us can say something stupid to the other, and I think internally we both kind of smirk and like, all right, we're gonna revisit this later, and it's gonna be funny.
Yeah, exactly. I think we definitely know each other better now. We know each other's personalities now, and so if somebody says something that maybe would have insulted or upset us in the past, we're able to just be like, they're grumpy, they're hungry, like it's just something like. So I do think that there's a lot more understanding that comes
with age
and time. And I just feel like I know you so well. I feel like I know you better than yourself sometimes, and vice versa. Like, you can point out in a period of time where like I'm in a very bad mood or something that I'm just being this way because of, and you're probably right, but I don't want to hear it right then.
Yeah, self-awareness and self-recognition when it comes to a lot of the negative aspects of ourselves as individuals is a really hard thing for, I think, everybody. So there's so much value in having a spouse that, like you said, knows you so well, because they can point things out and help you to improve and hopefully become a better individual person.
Yeah, I think that's another thing I would tell people that are young is be honest with each other. And that doesn't mean attack someone. It doesn't mean be brutally honest. You love this person. This is your partner. So be sensitive, but be honest.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Be honest about your feelings, because if you don't and you just suppress it and you hide it, you will build up animosity.
It's going to become an issue.
Yes, it's going to come out. And in the meantime, you're bottling up all of this frustration, and then it explodes out. The person's like, whoa, what?
Yeah, and that's
all I said was put your pancakes away.
It's definitely happened to me for sure. I think being the male half of our relationship, we're not, men aren't real good about acknowledging feelings or setting time aside to reflect and be honest. I've definitely been guilty of that for sure. So again, there's so much there's so much value to come in being in a healthy relationship and having a partner that is willing to be compassionately honest with you on your flaws.
Yeah. Compassionately honest and in it. Like, I'm not going anywhere, and I know you're not going anywhere. So that makes us safe people. Kind of like a parental relationship. Our children can come to us at any time with anything, even if we're going to be mad or disappointed, because they know that we're a safe harbor. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, refuge. That's why I use the word refuge.
You need to have that in your partner.
I don't know. You're the only person, literally, of the billions of people on earth, you are the only person that I know I can come to with anything.
Yeah.
I think that's what being a spouse is.
Right.
So people talk about marriage being work over time. And while I guess I agree to a certain extent, but some of the times when I hear people elaborate upon that concept, I don't always necessarily agree. I think that there are moments of work that need to occur
Right.
that need to happen, kind of like a maintenance
Yeah.
of your relationship. But I don't think that your outlook and perspective on your relationship and marriage should be like, oh, this is work and work only, and it's just constant work, and it's you have to take the bad with the good, but there should be some good. It shouldn't just be
Yeah.
work.
No, it shouldn't just be work or something is not right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if all you're doing is working and you're not achieving something, then somebody's not doing it. So I think a big thing would be appreciation for your spouse and just gratefulness for their presence, just for being there, for being a member of the family, for the things that they do. I think a deal killer or something that's made it very difficult in marriage is this whole 50-50 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's such an accounting of points.
And keeping score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when you try to be completely 50-50, you have no roles, you have no jobs in the home, and everybody unloads the dishwasher, everybody cooks dinner, everybody works and brings in the money, everybody goes grocery shopping. All of a sudden it becomes, well, I did it last time.
Right.
And so I think roles are important and they're very helpful because there's expectations and there's things that you do that I don't want to do, and there's things that I do that you don't want to do. So I do most of the cleaning in the house, let's say. But if I go to the store and I come back and you vacuumed, it's rare.
Bonus points for daddy.
But it happens. And I'm so grateful that you were like, I'm going to do something that makes her job easier. Or, like I don't clean up really around the property. That's kind of your role. And
we've never discussed this though. I want to
No.
make it clear. Like there is no, although we do have these very defined roles, there has never once been a discussion about setting expectations.
right.
Ever.
We kind of settled into them.
Yeah, we just kind of naturally settled into them. And then I guess that created the expectation with each one of us individually, like internally. But we've never outwardly been like, hey, what I expect of you is X, Y, and Z. And you've never done that to me either.
But like if I sweep out the shop or something, like you'll be like, wow, thanks.
Bonus points for mama. Yeah.
So I think that it's kind of nice because it gives you the ability to kind of serve the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always nice. It shows appreciation. I feel like guys are kind of simplistic. Like, and maybe it's not all guys. Maybe it's just you. But I feel like you need respect, food, and sex. and no, I'm serious. And then you're happy. You're a happy man. And you're laughing because you know that this is true. Respect is huge for you. You want to feel respected and appreciated.
Not respect. I'd say it's appreciation.
That is respect.
I don't demand respect.
No, but
ever. I just think that any one of us wants to feel as though that we are being appreciated for the work that we're putting in and the efforts that we are putting forth.
when I say respect, though, a lot of that is just in tone too, in the way that your family members speak to you, in the way that I speak to you. There is a respect in that. Like I'm not like, oh my gosh, put that away, because that's not a respectful way to speak to your spouse. You're not going to get a good reaction. So I think there's respect in watching how you address somebody or seeking out ways to maybe just do something that makes their day easier or just shows appreciation. So, and then, I mean, food, and then
We get it.
you know what
We get it.
I'm serious. I think that's a huge part of a healthy marriage as well, because
Absolutely, especially the last one.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the
sure.
food. So, like with men, I mean, I'm sorry if your children are listening right now, but I think with men, like
Earmuffs.
women, when we're tired or we're busy or we're frustrated or we had a sassy conversation with our sister, we're not in the mood because our minds go elsewhere very easily. Mm-hmm. Where I feel like you could be like,
oh, don't single me out here.
No, guys could be, it doesn't even matter what's going on. Like our country could be in disarray and you guys are like, so
There's only one thing that's going to make me feel better about that right now.
yeah, we're like, if the sky was falling for a female, I think we're a lot more prone to be like, I'm not in the mood. I have like World War III headache,
So are you chalking this up as part of the work that maybe people are referring to when they say that marriage is work?
I think it's part of just the acknowledgement that, I mean, women are into it too, but I think just in a different way. Like I feel like guys can take it personally when a girl's not in the mood because they take it as a reflection of them. Like if it's been, a week or two or something, you're like, you don't like me anymore? Like what's going
No,
on?
all jokes aside, I do think it is a very, very important aspect of any marriage. But I don't want to.
I think it's super important.
I'm going to try to deviate away
All
from this.
right,
We're
all
keeping
right.
it PG-13-ish.
All right.
When it comes to work in a marriage, what I guess I kind of have a tendency to think about is, I guess, are moments like this. Like honestly, it was a big part of the motivation for us in starting a podcast, is that it literally designated a couple of hours every week for you and I to sit down without distractions, to look each other in the eye and to speak very openly with each other, even if it requires that we become emotional, as we all just experienced here. But I think it's so important. And that's really where the work comes into play, because doing these types of things, especially on a regular basis, like we have now committed to, it helps to fortify your marriage and build some strength and resilience along the way. I think it's so important. Just communication.
Yeah. Just not losing one another,
Yeah.
which can happen
Right.
with kids when you're raising kids.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for you and I to express that gratitude that we have for each other and reflect together on life's accomplishments and hardships. And it's so valuable. Like later tonight, we are going out to dinner. It's not something that we do very often. In fact, it's something that
We
some
don't do
years
enough.
we never do, with the exception of our anniversary. And I think a lot of people would probably find that troubling, but it's just we're so busy, and because we do it so rarely or infrequently, it again, I place a tremendous amount of value on those nights out.
Right. Yeah. I think it's so important to always be dating your spouse.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep.
Yeah, always be dating and always be trying to win them over. And because I don't think you should get married and then just let yourself go and then start being rude.
Yeah,
and
marriage is not a finish line.
No, it's not.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think you should. I had a friend whose mom called her husband her boyfriend. And I thought that was so weird. But she's like, you are my boyfriend. And she would always make this joke. And I was like, that's so cheesy. No, I was in high school, but I get it now. And they're still married. And I'm
So
sure
she was
they're
trying to be cute.
Yeah, but she viewed him that way.
Right.
Like they had been married 30 years and she still looked at him and was like, that's my boyfriend and we're going on a date.
It's important to be playful in your marriage too, I think.
Yeah.
And we are both very naturally goofy people.
Right.
That comes across a lot in our videos. But yeah, I think it's so important to like play and have fun together.
Laugh
as a
together.
couple. Laugh together. Just act stupid on occasion, or do something that's very spontaneous. Yeah, there's so much good to come from that.
And be friends.
Yes. Before anything else,
Yeah.
I think, you are my best friend. Like, undoubtedly. I can't even think of anyone even remotely close to you in that respect. There's no second place.
That's why
There's
they
you
say,
and only you.
yeah, guys and girls can't be friends because,
It's true.
I mean, look what happened.
Dang, all guys are perverts. You just said it yourself, right?
As long as you're fed. And yeah. But I mean, I encourage anyone I don't care how long you've been married, like go on a date, put your dang phones down. Like, don't you dare pull those out unless you're asking the waitress to take a photo of you. But go on a date, sit there and talk. Sit there for 2 hours, order a couple of wines, order a bottle. Heck, that's what we're doing.
Yep.
And, and sit there and discuss everything. And it's, maybe you're talking about work. Maybe you're talking about your kids. We always end up talking about our kids when we go out.
As long as you're talking, as long as you're openly communicating and looking at your partner in the eye, I think that, again, it's such a big thing for us. And just to have those very open discussions is huge in the maintenance department of a marriage.
Yeah, we're kind of transitioning now because our kids are getting older and we have never gone on a vacation by ourselves. No. We didn't even go on our honeymoon by ourselves because we already had Nevaeh.
We didn't have a honeymoon. We just took a trip like a year and a half later.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just a family vacay, but we only had one kid at that point. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it hasn't happened.
No.
Which is amazing.
And we don't spend any nights away from our children, but that's what we're doing right now. That's what this chapter in our life is. And I think that's okay. But now that the kids are starting to get older, like we need to kind of revisit what we were before and maybe start dating one another again. And maybe we do go on a vacation with just you and I.
That's a good point too, because it does change over time. Like I think you referenced in a past episode of the podcast that once the kids are out and we find ourselves as empty nesters, and how old are we going to be? I don't know, 50 or so. It's going to be a weird time for us because it's such a drastic state of transition, and life as we have always known it doesn't look the same all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean that you and I, try to figure things out along the way and have to navigate this newfound reality that we've found ourselves in. It's crazy to think about.
I think that's going to be a really hard time for me.
It's going to be a hard time for both of us.
Yeah.
Because so much of our identity is wrapped up in being parents.
Yeah.
That's been everything for us for the last 17 years.
I'm kind of hoping that by the time that Eli moves out, that Nevaeh will be like married and having kids, and she'll live like relatively close. And then I can just have that smooth transition of like, I will watch them every single day.
It's still going to be a transition though. Even with the kids getting older at this point already, to where they don't need us nearly as much as they once did not so long ago. It's been tough to figure out. It really has been, if I'm being honest.
It is. It's been hard, but it's funny because you and I are definitely bonding more over this. Like it used to be like I was the mother and you were the father. And then we would have, when you first start having children, there are disagreements that come in with like parenting and stuff like that. So I felt like we were kind of separated and we had the 4 kids between us.
I think it was new. And so we were having to figure it out.
Yeah.
Again, it was a new stage of life.
And yeah, it was like me, you, and then the 4 kids. And they kind of, like I'm picturing like a family bed and they're all kind of between us. And that was just life. And now I feel like it's kind of like us rotating over here together and the 4 kids standing in front of us. And now it's like them against us. Not that we're adversaries, but we're becoming like a team now, like a united front, because our kids' problems, not even problems, but their situations are becoming bigger than when they were little.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking to Nevaeh about dating, like we're talking to her.
Yeah, the conversation.
Parent.
The topic of conversation has changed dramatically in the past, really since moving to Idaho, even because Nevaeh was still very young when we moved here, and all the rest of the kids were really young. And now we have 2 teenagers, almost 3 teenagers here in the very near future, seeing all the changes that are occurring with Kira, which is killing me. Yeah, it's just weird the way things change over time without you really even realizing it. It kind of feels like at least for myself, I feel like I'm constantly playing catch up because reality is moving so quickly around me. And every time I look at the kids, I feel like they're bigger and they need me less. And, we've had discussions about that. It's just very interesting that you're in this constant state of having to adapt and catch up with the reality that you find around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting as that occurs. But something that we did recently that we were going to talk about on the podcast and then we never actually did was we took these personality tests.
Yeah.
And I think that it was so good. Nevaeh actually just took the test last night. And she's like, I learned so much about myself. So it was actually created by Jordan B. Peterson, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson.
Dr. Peterson.
Him and one of his graduate students and like 3 or 4 other psychologists. And it is a personality test and it's 100 questions. And so I think it's like $10 to take.
But it's intended for couples.
No, it's actually an individual test, but you can link it.
Right. So it's an individual test to reveal all these personality traits about yourself. And then you have the option of basically taking your results and being like, hey, we are together. How does this play out in a relationship?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So we were able to take the test and then we linked our results and then it gave us our individual results, but then it told you the implications that would mean for you as a couple.
Right.
And so I think if you're thinking about getting married, I would highly suggest taking that test. If you're already married and you're maybe having some problems and you can't figure it out, I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah. And again, completely speaking in generalities here, I wouldn't invest, I wouldn't make any decisions based on the findings of this test. But it's really interesting just in the process, you learn about yourself.
You do.
Yeah. You learn about maybe why it is that you suck at certain things in your marriage.
I will say that this test is harsh. Like, it doesn't matter what your personality is. It's like, this is where you suck. But some of the stuff that it said, you have told me when you've been upset, you've been like, you are this way. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the results and it's like, you are this way, I was like,
again, it's very hard for us to have that level of self-awareness when it comes to our own flaws, our own personality traits, and our own shortcomings, for sure. So to have that reinforcement, because the same thing would apply to me. Like, I know, again, I've got a number of issues as a person, as an individual, and you can tell me, but to have that reinforced by like test results from an impartial person who's not even present with you, just based on science, is really interesting.
Well, it's funny because like we'll get into arguments and I'll say, well, you're taking that personally when it's not personal. Like it was just a comment. It wasn't meant to be an attack. And you're like, and you're very responsive. I wouldn't say like volatile, but you're very
No,
you're
can't
responsive.
I can't
like
be.
if somebody just like a look or a comment can cause a response from you.
For sure. If it comes to anything that I view as being like tremendously important to me, like there are stories that we can get into about things that have happened in the past, not with us within our family, from outsiders and people who have tried to come at us in a certain way. I'm thinking of like a time in the park when like a transient guy came up to our family and he was trying to like literally touch, was it Kaimani?
It was Kaimani.
As I was holding him. And did I like set him aside and like I went after the dude, like, do not, how dare you come at my family? Like,
Yeah.
I perceived him to be a threat. This is a long story, but
Yeah. There was more to it.
In that way, I can be volatile. I can be for
Yeah.
sure, because I'm extremely protective when it comes to myself and my family.
Yeah. And then you've always told me like you see too much positive in certain people and that makes it's a weakness.
It can be. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think we make up for each other's shortcomings. I have a background in police work. I'm very skeptical of pretty much anybody. I'm skeptical of you until you prove otherwise to me.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a healthy way of going about things and looking at your fellow human being. And I realize that. So I'm glad that you are on the opposite end of the spectrum.
But I was on the way opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, because it's a vulnerability at the same time. If somebody sees that you're constantly looking for the positives in something or someone in a situation, that's something that can be exploited for sure.
Oh, for sure. And so it's funny because I never really saw that in myself. Like, and then when I took that test and it's like it basically said that I was naive and to a fault, that I don't see threats that may be there. And then yours was like the polar opposite, that you see threats in like everything. And so that's like an example of being very different personalities, but it balancing.
Yeah, and it is what it is. Again, like I fully acknowledge that about myself. It's a massive flaw. It's something I've tried to work on for a really long time. And I think a lot of my personal history just kind of, this is something that just organically developed over time. And so I'm glad that I have you to help me balance those aspects of myself out.
Well, and same. And I think that's why I kind of looked for a personality like you and why I find strength and comfort in somebody with your personality. Like, because I know I can depend on you. I know you're a leader. I know you're a protector, and I need that. And you're teaching me to be more assertive. And then when I try to be assertive, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and vice versa. You're teaching me not to be a jackass, I guess.
I'm like, no, not right now. No, not that person.
No, they're okay. Relax. And I don't want to be like depicting myself as some hothead either. It's just like family means everything to me. And I grew up as an only child in a household that kind of fell apart. So when it comes to my family, I don't play.
Right.
At all.
Yeah. And I appreciate that in you. So yeah, it's funny because I think the most challenging things about our personalities that cause the conflict are also the things that we love about each other that attracted us.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So
yeah, like I'm glad you are the way that you are. And kind of like you said, maybe it's good. Like we're very much on the same page when it comes to like 90% of things, but in those areas where we kind of differ to like extremes.
And
so that balance is so, it's great. It's good. I think it's what makes us a very cohesive unit, again, is that we make up for each other's shortcomings.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been great. It's been really nice just in our relationship, in filling the voids with one another. And it's been really helpful for parenting too, to have that balance. Because, man, if I married someone like me, our kids would just get away with murder. And if you married someone just like you, they would be like, yes, sir.
We'd be beating
standing
people
at
up all the
attention.
Like,
yeah.
No,
so
I'm not,
I know.
I'm not a hard ass by any, clearly. I'm not a hard ass by any means. I'm just very emotional, even to a fault sometimes. Clearly, I'm very emotional.
Do you think you're an overthinker?
I can be a complete overthinker as well. Yeah. With something that, like you said, you can just be very, like tongue in cheek in passing that just, like you or anybody else can make a remark and I will dissect it and like try to look for the hidden meaning when maybe it's not there.
Yeah. And then I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And so I'm left all baffled. And then I think that I'm more of like a wing it kind of person. So, and I can be that way with my words as well, where like I literally didn't mean anything by it. I'll just very carelessly say something or make a comment or do something. I can be like that. I can be very impulsive and you're not. And so I think that's another area where we balance each other.
Yeah.
Like when you're like, yeah, moving to Idaho would be fun. I'm like, yeah, let's go tomorrow. And you're like, whoa, wait.
Pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes, lady.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's how we ended up in Vegas. I was, we were young and just dating. And I'm like, do you want to move to Vegas? Like, cause I was going. So yeah, I think you've helped me not be a tumbleweed in life, which has been good.
No, it's been quite the journey. It's been an adventure. I didn't know what life had in store for us, and not that life is done by any means. We still have a long way to go.
Just getting started, baby.
Just getting started, but it's been a complete adventure. You and I have been all over the place in our 20 years together, and so grateful to you for that because you have kind of like you just said, you've pulled me past my own personal boundaries in a number of ways with what it is that I've been comfortable with, and there's been we've taken on so many massive risks primarily because of you. And your positive outlook on things and your never-ending encouragement, and it's been crazy.
Well, and you've anchored me with your just strength and humility and dependability. I mean, you're totally safe. I've never worried about you straying or not being true to our family or doing anything with a selfless or a selfish thought in your head. You just live to serve your family and protect us. And I've always felt that from you from like the first date.
Yeah. So. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. It's been good. We're going to see what the next 20 years have for us.
It's been unreal. So we're going out to dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Nice quiet evening for us. No kids, no distractions.
We've got the respect in the food. So I'm just saying.
It's going to be a good night.
I need some wine.
It's going to be a good night. Mm-hmm. All right, mama. 19 years together, 15 years of marriage.
I love it.
Cheers
with
it up.
Our tea and our wine or our water. And we're not drinking any wine yet.
It's very early in the day. Sorry I got so emotional. Apologize, everybody. But this stuff it's good to talk about. It's good. I'm glad we can tap into some emotion every now and again. It's good.
Yeah.
All right. Love you.
Love you.
We'll see you guys on the next episode. Next Wednesday. New Good Simple Living video out on Saturday, per the usual. Anything else?
Nope. That's it. Let's go get that food part over with.
Let's celebrate. We'll see you guys.